Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive on something that's been brewing for a while, and it's kind of heating up now, right?
Yeah.
Greenland and its potential independence from Denmark.
Yeah.
We've got some recent news. Greenland's Prime Minister gave a New Year's speech.
Right.
And we'll look at that, but obviously we've got to look at the historical context too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is going to be a fascinating deep dive, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just about one island wanting to break away. It brings up a lot of issues about self-determination, what is colonialism, what's the legacy of colonialism.
Yeah.
And, you can't talk about Greenland without talking about the United States interests, right?
Oh, of course.
So let's just jump right into this.
Yeah.
Let's start with this Prime Minister's New Year's speech. What were some of your takeaways?
Well, it was really interesting to me how the Prime Minister, Múte Egede, framed the issue. He said, he wants to break Greenland free from the shackles of colonialism. Strong language, right?
It is strong language, yeah.
And it kind of sets the tone for, I think how he views this issue, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just about, political autonomy. It's about reclaiming a sense of identity.
Right, agency.
Exactly.
And it makes you think, what does true equality even look like in this relationship?
Yeah.
Between Greenland and Denmark. He's saying cooperation with Denmark has not really delivered on that.
Yeah, he seems to think that there's still a lot of work to be done to achieve full equality.
So let's talk about that history then.
Yeah.
Because, this relationship, the journey to self-determination has been a long one.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been going on for centuries. For a long time, it was a Danish colony.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until, relatively recently, 1953, that it even became a self-governing territory within Denmark.
Right.
So that means they have, they can govern their own internal affairs, but they're still under Denmark's overall authority.
So then, fast forward a bit, 2009.
Right.
Things started to change.
Yeah. Things get really interesting here because this is when Greenland gets the right to hold a referendum on full independence.
Yeah.
So it's like they were given, the keys to their own future, but they haven't quite, turned the lock yet. Right.
They haven't gone for it yet. So what's driving this push now? What's changed?
Well, I think there are a few things going on. One is definitely, there's this growing sense of national identity among Greenlanders, and particularly among the younger generations.
Wow. They
really want to control their own destiny. But, that desire is also very much tied to this kind of reckoning with the past.
Mm.
There are some pretty controversial chapters in the history of Danish-Greenland relations.
Oh, yeah.
And, one of the most well-known ones is the forced sterilization of Inuit women in the 1960s.
Yeah, that's something we should talk about a bit more because it's a really serious issue. And, those kinds of incidents, they leave deep scars.
Yeah.
And I imagine those scars definitely contribute to this desire to break away.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, there's all this talk of we want to break away.
Yeah.
But the big question, can Greenland stand on its own 2 feet economically?
Right.
Because that's the big question.
Yeah.
Right. So what are people saying in Greenland?
Well, there is this sort of debate going on. The polls suggest that most of Greenland's 57,000 residents do support independence.
Right.
But there are a lot of different opinions on the timeline. When should they do it?
Right.
How should they go about it? And, I think a lot of people are worried about what it'll actually mean for their daily lives.
Of course. Yeah.
Can they build a sustainable economy? What will happen to social services?
Yeah.
So these are real concerns.
Yeah, those are really important questions. But then, there's this whole other aspect.
Yeah.
Which we kind of alluded to at the beginning.
Right.
It's wild card.
For
Right?
United States, yeah.
The United States.
Yeah.
Remember when former President Trump offered to buy Greenland?
Oh, yeah, that was, quite a moment.
I mean, Denmark immediately dismissed it.
Of course, yeah.
But it really did shine a spotlight on Greenland,
Yeah.
its strategic importance, especially in the Arctic.
Right. Because, you got to think about it. Climate change is opening up the Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
And as it does, access to resources, access to shipping routes, all of this becomes more and more valuable.
Right.
And Greenland is right in the middle of all of that.
Right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So putting aside Trump's sort of unconventional approach to international diplomacy, what does this all mean for Greenland's future?
Well, I think the big question is, are they going to become this new focal point in global politics?
Hmm.
This new battleground over resources. And it's something that I think all of us should be thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Because if Greenland does go independent, they're going to have to be very careful about navigating these relationships with countries like Denmark and the U.S.
Right.
Both of those countries have their own interests in the region.
Of course.
And Greenland's going to have to figure out how to balance those interests with its own goals.
It's a long road ahead.
It is, yeah. It's going to be complex. It's going to be challenging. But, the possibility of self-determination, that's a very powerful motivator.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's driving a lot of this momentum.
So there you have it. That's our deep dive on Greenland's potential independence. We've looked at the Prime Minister's New Year's speech, some of the historical context, and, of course, the role of superpowers like the United States. It's a complicated issue with a lot of moving parts, but it's definitely one worth paying attention to. Make sure to check back in with us soon for more deep dives.
Absolutely.
Until then.
See you later.